All right, I think we're at a good starting point, and we welcome others as they join us this afternoon. So I wanted to hand it over to Teresa, who is with the AASP, to provide some opening remarks. Teresa?
Thanks, Alex. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you may be today. I want to welcome you to the webinar, Accelerating CRM System Selection, which is sponsored by the Huron Consulting Group. I wanted to just let you know that this is one of the value pieces that we offer to AASP members. I have had the blessing to be a charter member of AASP for several years now and have been in the advancement services industry for what seems like a very long time, but it's been fantastic. I am the treasurer of AASP, and it has been a wonderful opportunity to network with so many folks in the advancement industry. So part of a membership with AASP, in addition to free webinars like this one, we can also provide our members with a vast best practices library that you can access on our AASP website. We have discounts on our annual conference. That is always a lot of fun to network and see everyone. And then we have a lot of new educational opportunities that we're offering. We had a summer series last year, and we'll continue that again this year, as well as our summit conference in the fall. We'd like to very much thank Huron for sponsoring this. They are also a Summit 2021 Palladium sponsor of our Data Analytics and Insights workshop. And we're very thankful for that. We could not do a lot of the things that we are giving to our members without the sponsors. Huron's a global consultancy that enables their clients to create the transformative change that they need to own their future, working with over 500 higher education institutions, currently working on CRM implementation, technology innovation, and business process review. And they are also listed as Forbes 2021 top management consulting firms. So we're very thankful to have this time that they can share this expertise with some of our colleagues from Vanderbilt.
Great. Thanks so much, Teresa. We appreciate it. So I wanted to start, and again, thank you all for attending, and share a little bit more about our objectives for today's discussion. So first and foremost, we wanted to help you all understand why an accelerated system selection process could benefit your institution. And so I think a lot of us have been kind of raised and socialized in terms of traditional system selection efforts. And we feel like different approaches might be beneficial to your institution as you're thinking about your next steps with CRM. So wanted to share a little bit more rationale and background for that. In addition to that, we're extremely excited to have our honorable guests, Jason and Jill, on the phone today. If you can't tell, they're from Vanderbilt, and it's their giving day today, so make sure you go donate after the call. But they recently went through an expedited system selection effort and have been gracious enough to join us to share their story. So we're very excited to have them as part of our conversation today. And then the third portion of this webinar, we wanted to leave you all with a checklist of sorts to share our thoughts on techniques that you could employ for your own accelerated system selection effort that hopefully you can take back to your institutions and move using forward. So I wanted to start with brief introductions. My name is Alex Faklis. I'm a senior director with Huron, and I have been with the firm for about 9 years now. I've had the pleasure of working with several clients, including Vanderbilt, on their advancement system assessment and selection efforts. And so look forward to bringing that perspective to today's conversation. Prior to Huron, I worked in advancement consulting and in an advancement office itself out in Boston. Melissa, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Quilos. I'm the director here at Huron, focused on technology solutions for advancement. Had the pleasure to work with Vanderbilt, still work with Vanderbilt on this process. Prior to joining Huron, I spent 20 years in advancement, most recently at Arizona State University, their foundation, leading a CRM transformation process for our advancement and development efforts. So really glad to be here today, and I will turn it over to Jill.
Good afternoon. I'm Jill Baltz. I'm from Vanderbilt University. I work in development and alumni relations. Currently, I'm working on our CRM project, but prior to that, I've worked in advancement services at Vanderbilt for over 20 years. Jason?
I'm Jason Roosh. I've been at Vanderbilt for about 16 years. Glad to be here as a guest. Not so sure about the honorable distinction, but about 2/3 of that time as the IT lead at our business school, and then about the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years in a variety of roles with IT at the enterprise level. And then joined forces with Jill about a year ago, and got rocking and rolling with Salesforce and our efforts for transformative change in development and alumni relations.
Great, thanks, Jason. So I wanted, Jill, I think everyone knows Vanderbilt, the name quite well, but I thought we'd let Jill spend just a couple minutes talking about Vanderbilt's advancement and donor and alumni relations team.
Thank you. As Alex said, I think most of you are familiar with Vanderbilt. We were founded in 1873. 2023 will be celebrating our 150th anniversary. So that's kind of on our horizon as our next big milestone. Just to give you a little bit about the size of our advancement and development operations, in fiscal year 2020, we raised about $135 million in gifts and new pledges. Those dollars supported over 1,400 areas of the university. There were over 30,000 donors, both households and organizations, and our endowment is about $6.3 billion. We did, while Vanderbilt has a medical school, we did separate from our medical center in 2016. So the medical center and the university are two separate 50C organizations. So our fundraising numbers do not include any support for Vanderbilt University Medical Center.
Great, thanks, Jill. I mean, great accomplishments on the Vanderbilt side, and I'm sure that those numbers will only continue to grow. So thanks for that introduction. Teresa gave Huron a great introduction early on in the call. What I wanted to emphasize is we are a firm of close to 4,000 full-time consultants, and the majority of our business falls in the higher education and the healthcare spaces. So we have over 900 dedicated consultants to higher education. Melissa and I are just 2 of those 900. And in addition to that, we offer various services in the advancement space, whether it's business case development, system selection, or implementation work. And we've also, we're very proud to have been a recent partner of the year with Salesforce. So wanted to just share a little bit of background about our firm. So let's dive into the meat of today's presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Melissa to share a little bit more about the evolution of CRM technology and how that ties back to system selection.
Right, thanks. So for the purposes of this conversation, we want to put some definition around what we mean by CRM for advancement. As most of you know, CRM, or constituent relationship management, is really both a strategy and technology solutions that will help you manage, but also drive more meaningful relationships with your constituents. So when we talk about CRM for advancement, we're really referring to the core business functions like constituent management, which would include obviously bio demo, but prospect and portfolio management, gift administration, so gift and pledge entry for all the different various types of transactions that you receive, as well as batch processing and receiving functionality. Communications and engagement tracking. This is really one of the areas that CRM provides needed functionality for advancement, with the ability to track different clubs or membership programs, communication preferences, and interest and stewardship activities, allowing you to not only segment your communication, but provide more relevant and meaningful engagement with your constituents. And then reporting and analytics, utilizing in-system reports, dashboards, and information access functionality to enable real-time action and decision-making right within the system itself. So if we think of these core functions as the what of CRM, now we want to talk a little bit about the why of the CRM and the transformative change that you may realize as part of your CRM selection process. So when we think about those transformative benefits, I mean, these are some of the ones that we typically see. I think these were important for Vanderbilt, and you'll hear a little bit more about that. This is not an exhaustive list, and in certain circumstances, risk mitigation may be a really important benefit of your CRM transformation, depending on where you are with your institution. But some of what we see as the result of the implementation of the CRM is optimized business processes, really streamlining processes, taking out unnecessary steps, automating things along the way. Again, robust reporting and data analytics right there within the system, and the ability to really take operational reports and information access and take action directly in the system. And then enhanced constituent engagement. Again, being able to track information about your constituents that you maybe haven't been able to before, and utilize that information in really meaningful ways so that the communication that they are receiving is specific to their interests and is at the right time with the right messaging. And then I think one of the benefits of the CRM that we don't always talk about as much as we should is that continuous improvement. The fact that you would be then on a solution that is evolving over time with multiple, whether it's releases a year from not only your platform, but the additional functionality that the different advancement solutions have built on top of those platforms. And then the continuous improvement that your own teams will add to the environment over time, so that you're not getting behind from a functionality and technology standpoint. You're really always staying on top of what's available. And all of that leading to the transformative change and the competitive advantage that we all know that everyone needs in this space right now to be able to kind of compete for that philanthropic dollar and the attention of our donors. It's been so informed by what they see in the consumer space, and they have the same expectations when they're dealing with their alma mater, their institutions. So next, we actually have a poll question for all of you. So get ready to answer the poll question. We want to understand, are you planning for or in the midst of an advancement CRM selection right now? And if yes, what's the best way to categorize this selection stage that you're in? We'll give you a few seconds for this.
I feel like we should have the Jeopardy music in the background.
And now, exactly.
I was just thinking the same thing. They're entertaining all these guest hosts. You could be the next one.
Exactly. So business case development, so kind of early on in the process, and then requirements identification. But some of you are at that point of either creating the RFP or going through demos and evaluation. I'm sure a number of you out there have probably seen some demos occasionally here and there. You've seen some functionality, but I think this is kind of an interesting indicator as far as where people are in the process right now. And actually those two top stages are really relevant for this conversation. So that's great that's kind of the audience that we're talking about here. So I think we'll pass it back over to Alex.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So when we think about traditional system selection, we wanted to share this image with you. And again, it's very sequential in nature. So, one activity starts, maybe there's some overlap, but oftentimes it's a little bit modular, and it's unfolding in a linear fashion, right? So we start with the case for change, and then we end with a CRM selection and recommendation. All really important, good steps. But I would also say that often this work can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, right? I've seen some institutions spend a lot of time, thinking about their requirements in detail, developing use cases, going through exhaustive vendor demos. And so I would say, and feel free to disagree with me in the chat, but this is kind of our typical mentality in terms of system selection. And I think, again, what we wanted to share a little bit more today was how you might approach it differently and still get the results that you need to be effective in your technology transformation. So I wanted to ask the audience to engage again in another question. And this time you can enter your responses in the Zoom chat function directly at the bottom of your screen. And the question that I have is, in one word, please tell us about, how you would describe your reaction if your leadership team asked that you select a new CRM to replace your legacy database in 2 months or less. So I'd love for everyone to, think about those one words or that one word response and post that into the chat. Yes, that's great.
I love that. Resign.
You guys are a good group. Thank you.
Bring on the coffee. Time to get to work. For the record, is more than one word.
One word. No, I'm just kidding. Short responses will do as well. So.
These are awesome. Budget.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
All right.
That's
Well,
awesome.
you can all enjoy those as those continue to come in. But I think we've seen a range of responses, everything from "I'm resigning" to "let's go." So that clearly elicits, just different emotional or maybe rational reactions. So thank you for sharing that in a little bit more detail. So we wanted to begin and talk a little bit more about Vanderbilt's story. So, this is where we, I know you'll all appreciate hearing from Jill and Jason. And so Jill, I wanted you to, share a little bit about your thoughts on this question in terms of what was the catalyst, for DAR's CRM replacement. And maybe Jill, before you even answer that, you can let everyone on the phone know, kind of start to finish, how long you had for the selection for your CRM.
Probably about 2 months. Believe it or not, a year ago today, a new CRM was not on our horizon. It was several factors kind of collided together that changed our pathway. The first being was about mid-March last year, like most of the country, that we were told all of a sudden we were going to start working from home. I think initially we were supposed to work from home till March 30th, and it's April 7th of the next year, and we're still working from home at Vanderbilt. But so obviously the pandemic played a part, but we also, Vanderbilt got a new chancellor last year. He officially started July 1st of 2020, though he was selected in January and was very much in the picture in April and May of last year. We also got new leadership within development and alumni relations, and our new leadership in DAR coincidentally was our current vice chancellor for information technology at Vanderbilt. So all of those things kind of came together, and the feeling was, while the best analogy was, while the car was in the garage because we couldn't, our development officers couldn't travel, we couldn't do fundraising in the way we had been doing. So while our car was in the garage, let's make technological improvements to get the car ready to go out on the road. And we basically, I think when this was presented to me in May, I think at that time we wanted a vendor chosen by July 1st.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful, Jill. And I think, in terms of, I like the car in the garage analogy. And I think too, as you had expressed in this quote here, leadership was really intent on looking forward, not backward. So I think that combination of factors really led to that catalyst for change.
Definitely.
And I'll add from the IT guy perspective too, the current system that we were on was facing some end of life challenges, which if we didn't get started on pretty soon, we weren't going to have a car to drive.
Right, exactly. And so I think sometimes, as Melissa was saying earlier, the impetus for the change is risk management, right? And just that we're not able to be effective and or secure, in terms of the work that we're doing moving forward. So I wanted to talk a little bit, Jason, about the importance of executive sponsorship in terms of your ability to select your CRM within 2 months, and then also start on what I would consider a pretty accelerated implementation path. And so tell us a little bit more about the role that executive sponsorship played in your system selection efforts.
Sure. It was definitely a key element. If we didn't have the executive urgency and sort of management willpower, we wouldn't have been able to line people up to make this decision and get through some of the things we got through as quickly as we did. Like Jill said, we had a new chancellor and he was eager to get going. And we know that we have a capital campaign coming at some point. The pandemic has certainly complicated things, and we want to be successful with that. And, like Jill said, the new leadership in DAR is of the same mind as the vice chancellor for IT, because it's the same person. John Lutz, who's our vice chancellor for both areas, has had a history since he came to Vanderbilt about 6 years ago of really trying to not so much think of having IT projects as having business projects, right? Let's think about what is the right thing to do for the business. And I think he saw pretty quickly that, in order for him to be successful with the charge for the chancellor in transformative efforts in DAR, we also had to have a digital transformation to go along with our broader organizational realignment. And so that was really important because, we didn't just make up, hey, we want to do this by July. Like, we had pretty clear marching orders and could then say, hey, we got to do this, and we're not just making this up. This is not Jill and Jason's idea. This is what the senior most leadership in the institution wants to do. And these are some of the deadlines that we met. It also helped, frankly, in aligning people, right? So one of the other challenges here is how do you get, in order to go quick, like people have to show up at work, or at least virtually, and work on this all day if you're going to move that quickly. And so, John was able to say to me from IT and Jill from DAR, hey guys, drop everything. This is your job. And that was also really important to align the human resources as well.
Right. Jason, what are your thoughts? I'm thinking there might be some people on the line that might not have the same level of executive sponsorship as you had at Vanderbilt. So what are your thoughts on how they might be able to, push their system selection efforts forward?
One easy one that everybody understands is that risk mitigation that just came up a few minutes ago. Depending on what the current state of your existing systems are, is there a push more than a pull, in addition to a pull? That's one part of the equation, the exposure to risk and lack of support and missing capabilities. The other side is that pull. And I think that can be tricky. And I think it's a matter of figuring out, what's the language of the executive leadership that resonates and what are their priorities, and trying to match up. Well, what new capabilities could we gain, and how would those line up with achieving the goals of the institution?
That's great. Thanks, Jason. I did, you had started to talk a little bit about the alignment of IT and DAR for this project. So wanted to hear a little bit more from you about what some of the benefits were of the strong partnerships that you and Jill and your respective teams both had for this system selection effort.
Do you want to start? Jill and I at some point are sort of almost the same person at this point. I think our faces are going to be burned into each other's respective screens by the end. But do you want to
Yeah.
start on that one?
Yeah, luckily we work well together. I think we have always partnered with VUIT to get things done. This was a little different of a partnership because it really was working together constantly to move things forward, and we were each able to bring different pieces and parts of the puzzle for our team. And I think the partnership is good because we went on several bus tours, as we like to call them, as some of the VUIT people that are core part of our project weren't necessarily familiar with development or what we do, why we do it, how we do it. And while I may have some inkling of what VUIT does from working with them, I certainly didn't know the nuts and the bolts. So we did a lot of bus tours to kind of familiarize each other with each other's business. But it also was helpful as we went through all of these demos because we were able to represent the complete picture, because we had the business side represented. We knew from a functionality standpoint what we needed, but we also had central IT represented and what would fit in with the infrastructure of the university. And even more long-term, what are some of the longer-term benefits of this project to Vanderbilt just outside of DAR? Obviously, we're the big tenant. We like to say we're the anchor tenant of the Salesforce Mall right now, but hopefully down the road, we're not the only tenant, and there's benefit we can get from the university as a whole, that IT is more core because they support everyone and they bring some of that knowledge. Anything you want to add, Jason?
Pretty good answer.
I like that analogy. The tenant at the Salesforce Mall. Melissa, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I like it. We've got cars and malls and all kinds of analogies for today. So let's talk a little bit about selection pace, because that's kind of core to what we're here to talk about, actually, and the fact that you went so quickly. What benefits do you think you derived from this expedited, although unexpected, initially selection process that actually others should consider and would maybe benefit from? And then what are some drawbacks, if you can identify any?
I think the accelerated timeline really helps get buy-in, because so often when we start a project, we'll start and this will be phase one, this will be a later phase, and phase one is going to take a year to 2 years. So the people in phase two are like, yeah, I'll never get around to me, or 4 years from now, that might not even be what I want. So expediting it, people can see and know when this will actually benefit them. And I think that really helps them get excited and get buy-in, just to see changes coming sooner rather than later. And it will impact them in the very near future. Obviously, there are some drawbacks because you're always worrying about, okay, by moving so fast, what are we forgetting? Is there something we're not doing well? And I'm sure something like that will come up. We're not necessarily aware of anything we're intentionally not doing well or leaving behind right now, but time will tell.
There will be a day when we blame something that goes wrong on the selection, and we say, if we hadn't tried to pick something so fast, we wouldn't have made that mistake. And that may be true at some point, but I think overall, I don't know, I came away feeling like we saved a lot of energy that might have gone into things that really didn't matter, right? Thinking about 900 requirements when, look, there's only so many systems on the market and they can only do so many things. And, and then we end up heartbroken that, we're not meeting 100 requirements that we were never going to meet in the first place. So, why spend a lot of energy on those efforts? And I think, one drawback though was it made some of the connecting activities, right? Selecting something includes a few other activities that kind of go on at the same time or right after that you think of as part of a selection, like budgeting and procurement, right? So it also means that we didn't have a whole lot of time to work out the budget and get that approved. So that was pretty stressful and difficult, and probably had a higher degree of uncertainty than it might had we moved a little more with a longer timeline. But I think that's okay. And the executive leaders were able to accept some of those trade-offs, right? We understand that because you go fast, some of the uncertainty factor in some of these decisions is going to be higher. Yeah.
And I will, to kind of go back to going fast and how we did it. One of the things we did not, like Jason alluded to, we did not spend a whole lot of time documenting and formalizing requirements, because we knew Vanderbilt had a Salesforce instance in place. So we knew right off the bat, our selection was narrowed down to, we wanted something on the Salesforce platform. And we talked to Huron, we talked to Salesforce, and really there were two choices for us. And it's like, it didn't make sense to spend a lot of time documenting 900 requirements. It's like, these are our two choices. Let's look at them. Let's vet them. Let's see which one's the best. Because at the end of the day, while we may like to pretend we're special or we're different, we are an advancement shop, and we really aren't that different when it comes down to the system and the nuts and bolts than any other advancement office. At the end of the day, we need to track constituents. We need a way to enter and track proposals and contacts with individuals, and we need to process gifts. How we do it and to what degree may differ, but the nuts and the bolts of what we all need to do aren't that different.
Yeah, that upstream narrowing down was really helpful. I mean, if we look at what Gartner says, talk to Huron, talk to some peers. If you can hone in on, look, there's only a few, there's a limited set of viable solutions. Get to that as quickly as possible and work on those. I saw on the last slide, that a 1-year selection process included, I think, 2 months for demos and evaluations. I think we did it in about 3 weeks, because and now it was somewhat facilitated by circumstances, the pandemic, that everybody was comfortable with Zoom and we didn't have to have travel and this, that, and the other thing. But it was 2 or 3 days of demos 1 week, and I think 2 or 3 days of demos another, and about a week's worth of Q&A, and got right through it. Yeah.
So I think that's sort of starting out the selection process at this sort of quick pace actually then parlays right into the implementation process and what's going to happen when you're actually in the CRM environment, both for the implementation and then for the sort of ongoing continuous improvement that happens as part of adopting a CRM. So we've talked a little bit about that continuous improvement and streamlining efforts throughout the selection process. This will help with the momentum and set the expectations for the pace of change that is ongoing throughout the implementation. And I think, continuing to work with Vanderbilt Vanderbilt, Jill and Jason see sort of the pace of change and decision making that is continuing throughout the process and will, even be beyond go live. So again, though, those optimized business processes, streamlining those business processes, creating automation opportunities, taking out unnecessary steps, improving your data integrity, robust tools that allow data access and privacy so that the right person in the right role has the right information. Obviously, the building of that 360-degree constituent profile, that's kind of what everyone wants when they talk about a CRM, but the ability to interact with that information and see all of that information on a constituent's profile and then add information along the way. I mean, these are all categories that will continue to change over time as you take advantage of the benefits that the CRM environment provides. So, again, that also applies to the robust reporting and information access. You will have the ability for more frequent wealth screening opportunities, for using potentially machine learning or AI functionality that's either built into the system, or you'll be capturing more information that then your data scientists and modelers are going to want to use outside of the system and build you more enhanced analytical models, and then enhanced prospecting activities like prospect queues and full transparency and visibility into all of the prospects that are up for assignment, the great work that research and prospect management does, and the collaboration with development officers. Those are all enhanced, and they will continue to evolve from when you go live on day one through the improvements that come, again, not only to the system, but what your teams internally will add, and the business processes that you'll be able to support. All really leading, those are all kind of foundational activities that can really then lead to enhanced constituent experiences, whether it's through self-service options, engagement portals to support volunteer activities or clubs or organizations, and then cause-based giving and fundraising opportunities. So those are all really continuous improvement that you'll expect, and that pace is very different than your traditional legacy systems that many of you are on today. And so that setting that pace during the selection process can really help keep that momentum going. At Vanderbilt, Jill and Jason and the team, they have people in on this project all the time and very excited about the change that's coming with that. So one of the benefits of speeding up your selection process. Let's talk a little bit about implementation roadmap and how critical Jill and Jason was thinking through the broader implementation roadmap for the selection process itself. And I think, Jason, you were kind of starting to allude to that with like the number of other things and decisions that are happening along, that the CRM doesn't exist on an island. So how critical was that roadmap planning?
I think it was important to us to kind of map out that roadmap just to show this wasn't a one and done. It wasn't just about this initial CRM selection, because all the things you just mentioned, Melissa, the online giving, the online community, those were all part of what we thought of and wanted to get to. However, that CRM selection was at the base of it because we needed the data there first. The data really had to go first. And this also is a great tool for us to use with leadership and with others in the department to show this is step one. We have to get all the data there, but then we do want to, and this has both an internal aspect and an external aspect, because the data has to be there first. The external aspect is a little further down the road, but it's still coming. We also have had a tendency in the past with projects, we will do phase one and get it done, and then kind of the resources dry up or they go back to their day job, so that phase two or the next step never fully takes place. So having this roadmap out there, publicized that this is the project, it ensures that we don't stop at once the CRM is brought up. There's more pieces to it.
Yeah, that was a tricky challenge actually early on in the sort of that executive. This is the drawback of the executive excitement and urgency, right? They're like, okay, I want my walk-in closet and my fabulous bathroom, and I want it tomorrow. And it's like, well, wait a minute, we can't do that until like the foundation of the house is in place. So trying to work through that, getting the fundamental systems transition and all the data in there before some of the more exciting things are possible.
I do recall that a question was posed as to whether or not the CRM could just go ahead and be implemented in 6 months. And so when we decided that was maybe not the best idea, we did, we were pretty intentional about working in some additional milestones that could continue to show progress and momentum, and really be some key elements of preparing for a campaign at some point down the road, but weren't necessarily rushing that CRM implementation. And so this is just to kind of give a high level sense of the roadmap to show, the various places where milestones and activity are happening, and some key success factors along the way.
Yes, and I would say communication is an important part of the conversation, because I think we all took that you have a year to implement as assuming we had a year once we had selected and signed a contract, whereas I think some leadership was thinking we had a year from the time they told us about the project last May, and that's where that kind of, no, we can't get it done by July 2021. That's impossible came in.
Great. Thanks, Jill and Jason. Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think there are some, then, we've talked a little bit about it, but is there anything else from the standpoint of the pandemic that impacted either the pace, or, you've talked about some more availability, taking care of the car in the garage, but is there anything else, around the pandemic that you wanted to kind of speak to? Because it feels like we're going to get out of this, and this is not necessarily something that everyone else on the call is going to have to worry about, but should they want to take advantage of some of this that was related to the pandemic, how did you guys experience that?
I think one of the biggest benefits to us was budget. Like Jason said, because this occurred so quickly, and like Vanderbilt's budgeting process occurs in January for the following year. So budgets had been set and actually cut once because of the pandemic before we even knew about this project. So when all of a sudden we needed to find budget money to pay for everything we were doing, the fact that we couldn't hold in-person events, we couldn't travel, really helped us pay for the project, because all that unused travel money, the unused event money, really helped fund our year one cost of the project.
I think the other thing that happened too was it created a culture of acceptance of change, right? Everything else was different. Suddenly you're in Zoom all the time. Everything else is different. So, hey, changing our system, this is just one more thing, and it's pretty digestible, where in the context of all the other change going on, if the backdrop of dramatic change generally wasn't there, then people might have their perspective on this change might have been a little bit more like eyes wide open, maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But with everything else going on, I think it put it in perspective.
I think in a way, Jason, it's a positive in what was a very complicated and at times negative environment last year. So I think it's helpful to, again, put it all in perspective. So Melissa and I wanted to take the next 5 minutes or so and share with everyone who's part of this call what our thoughts are on, this checklist and list of techniques that you all could consider employing as you think about an accelerated system selection. So we'll go through, each of these areas in terms of strategic alignment, IT partnership, and then moving with intention. And we've touched on some of these. I think Jill and Jason naturally brought these up as techniques that they had used in their successful implementation, but we thought it would be helpful for you all to have it in one place. So if we start with strategic alignment, sometimes I hear, well, we need to replace our database. And I cringe a little bit because it's so much more than a database replacement. And this is where it ties to the institutional and advancement office strategic priorities. And so really thinking about what is the messaging to our leadership team and to our broader community that's going to be compelling? And how does this tie to, for example, I think Jill, do you want to share the name of your, I guess the tool that you're employing, the comprehensive solution? I know do you want to share what CAP stands for?
CAP was the campaign acceleration platform. And you asking for what we selected?
Oh yeah, no, I think I just wanted everyone to hear the name of your tool as CAP, because it ties directly to that strategic priority of campaign acceleration, right? Yes. And so branding it and thinking about how this is going to impact, Melissa went through a lot of those benefits earlier on, but we just feel like that's so important, particularly if you want to move quickly. We talked about strong executive sponsorship, and we had a slide a little bit earlier in terms of the defined roles of that executive sponsor. So, as Jason and Jill described, providing focus, providing, budget and resources, incentivizing the change, to a certain extent, getting everyone on the bus, right, to the mall. So it's really important to line that up front. And then finally, we do feel like having guiding principles established up front is a very useful tool set. So thinking about, not only how are we going to select a system, so what are those principles for and filters for our decision making, but then also how are we going to work together? I'm working with another institution currently, and one of the principles that's come to the table for them is that they are, first and foremost going to work to configure versus customize the system. So really establishing that up front is important in terms of the change that you're looking to realize. I'll hand it over to Melissa to talk about the other two components.
Yep, great. So I think Jill and Jason have touched on this a lot, the importance of the partnership between the DAR team and IT and how it's been central to their success. Not all of you are at institutions where it's the same executive leadership overseeing both areas. And so if that's the case, even for institutionally related foundations or advancement teams that may have their own IT support, alignment with the broader institutional strategy for CRM can really help you gain efficiency. So to Jill's point, they knew they had a Salesforce instance, they were going to be a Salesforce school from that perspective. And so just kind of narrowing down the options and aligning with what was overall the enterprise strategy really helped them cut out some time in exploring options that they very likely weren't going to go with. So if your institution does have an enterprise CRM strategy with a selected platform, it may make the most sense to align with that strategy early on. And it, like I said before, it doesn't exist on an island. CRM is typically part of a very connected environment that may include a data warehouse strategy, integration tools, BI or reporting solutions, security considerations. So understanding the enterprise, not only strategy, but tools and capabilities and resources available may take away some of the decision-making that your advancement team would otherwise have to make. And it also really sets you up for a lot of ability to share skill sets and resources and potentially establish centers of excellence down the road. So everyone is learning from each other and you're all kind of aligned with the same understanding and use of resources and skills to support the environment. And then moving with intention. And this is really just kind of keeping the focus on what's really important and trying to move in a streamlined way to get through the decision-making process so that you can realize all of the benefits of the CRM early. You're not waiting 4 years through selection and implementation to get to all of the benefits. So staying focused on the things that matter most, identifying those things that are non-negotiables. What are the pain points you're currently experiencing? What are those things that are really going to be meaningful change for your organization? And what really exists out there? And identify those as the things that you want to focus on, and assume that these systems have some of the basics. There are many more schools on these platforms today than there were even 2 years ago. And so assuming that some of the fundamentals are already taken care of, and really using the time and the energy to hone in on those things that are most important to your organization. Also, crowdsource the experience. Again, many more schools have gone through this than had a couple years ago. Reach out to your colleagues who are going through implementations right now. Learn about surprises, other things that they're having to consider throughout their experience, and then bring in expertise where you need it. So if it's building the case for support, or driving the selection process, or technical support throughout the implementation, find where that expertise is. Obviously, Huron can provide some of that. I know there are a number of others on the line that provide that expertise. And so bring in the experts when you need that additional support. Start documenting your business process assessment early, and where you want to make changes to your business processes. The earlier you understand that, it can really be very relevant in your requirements and really your use cases and user stories. But what I would say, I'll caution there, is don't over-engineer that, because you don't want to get so far down in re-engineering your business processes before you've selected the platform, the solutions, and end up having to redo it. And so get alignment on what those business processes need to be and how you need to make those improvements to help inform the use cases and user stories that you want to see from the various vendors. Execute tasks in parallel where you can. If you have the opportunity to work on strategic priorities and alignment at the same time as starting to put together an RFP, if you can do demos and reference checks at the same time, if you can bring in as many people as possible to demos over Zoom so that you can speed up that process, wherever you can do things in parallel, that helps keep the momentum going, and engage those stakeholders to continue that excitement throughout the project, because it's really not about the selection. It's a much larger project, and it's going to be a long haul. We can help with some considerations on speeding up the selection process, but the conversion process is still a process. And so we want to make sure everyone has, the momentum to kind of keep the excitement going through the next phases. So I think with that, we do have a few questions coming in the chat, and I don't know if we want to go ahead and read through some of those and throw those questions out there and see if we can answer some. We've got about 6 minutes left. So, I think actually I'm going to throw this one to Jill and Jason for your perspective on how relevant were consortia or peer recommendations when selecting a new CRM. How important was that to you in the process?
I think it definitely played a role for us. We did talk to several peer institutions. It kind of goes back to what we said on, we did not write out a huge list of requirements for our RFP because we may like to think differently. We are not unique in what we do as a business in development and alumni relations. So talking to peers and seeing, yes, they have used these solutions and they work for them, that was helpful for us to know.
Great. This one is, how does Salesforce integrate with the ERP environment on campus, and how did that play into the decision-making process? So from an integration standpoint, obviously Salesforce is a really flexible solution with open APIs and can, through the use of middleware or, all kinds of different integration possibilities can certainly integrate. But were there any considerations for you all as far as the integration with the ERP?
That, I think, is one of those that falls into, I think it's kind of the same challenge regardless of the system that we use. like I said, we narrowed it down to solutions based on Salesforce, and the integration world is pretty much the same for both of them. So it didn't really factor a whole lot into our selection process, but it certainly factors into our roadmap and the resources and other things needed to do integrations, because we're not just going to integrate with the ERP. We're on Oracle Cloud, so we've got to integrate with that from a financial standpoint, but also integrating with student systems and integrating with let's see, there's a couple others we've brought, other online, existing online giving systems or communities or things like that. So integrations is in itself an interesting challenge that we're having to figure out how to tackle.
Okay. Next, Kate wants to know what system you were on, and did that play into the ability to migrate on an accelerated timeline? So I don't think we mentioned what system you were coming from.
We're currently on Ellucian Advanced Web, and our timeline, we would have had an integrated timeline regardless. It does help that the vendor we chose has done into conversions from Advanced Web into their system beforehand. So they do have experience, but I think everyone uses Advanced a little bit differently. So just because they've done it before doesn't mean we have the data in the same place everyone else does.
Yeah, I think that was something that did play into our decision making. Okay, not only were we trying to make a selection quickly, we knew we were going to try to implement quickly. So one of the key differentiators on vendors was, how many conversions from Advanced to your system do you have under your belt? And, what is the availability of resources? And even pushing vendors to say, if we sign this paper today, who would show up and when would they show up to do the work? That kind of thing.
A second part to that question, you noted that Vanderbilt already had Salesforce on campus. So, and I think we touched on this a little bit, but I think you guys can kind of reiterate. Did this also provide a quicker implementation process, but already with the integration? So, maybe you can describe how Salesforce is already being used and sort of what the roadmap is, because then right. Jill said, she became the anchor store in the mall. So
right. Yeah. So I want to make two things clear. One is we are not that far along in our overall Salesforce journey. So our Salesforce team and capabilities is maturing, but not mature. And so I don't want to oversell our capabilities there, but also, we're using the present tense when we talk about implementation, not the past tense, right? We're still in the middle of that. So, maybe we get an A- or an A on selection. We're still writing the term paper to be graded on implementation. So we can't quite get a grade on that yet. But as far as that interplay, so we have been doing Salesforce like we mean it we've been doing it for almost exactly a year before we started this project. So we were far enough along to have formed a team and have a reasonable amount of expertise and have a strategy and have some principles around our Salesforce environment, but not have a whole lot of depth yet, and had not yet solved the integration puzzle for Salesforce. We had done at that point, I think, one integration, and it was pretty modest one-way integration that we just accomplished with existing in-house tools and developers.
Okay, we are at the top of the hour, and there was one question we didn't get to, but we'll see if we can get an answer out to you on that. We can follow up. So I'm going to hand it back to Teresa to wrap up here.
Thanks so much. Oh, this was robust content, and I hope everyone benefited from it. Thanks to the Vanderbilt team and to Huron for your expertise and willingness to collaborate to get this great content out to everyone. I would encourage everyone to, network with those that you've chatted with today. Check out all the wonderful member benefits on the AASP website at advserv.org. Get involved in volunteers, sign up for our communities, and look for more fantastic offerings throughout the year. And thanks again to Huron for their wonderful continued support of our organization.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.